Alright, guys, alright. Welcome back to the podcast at Tomboy Official. I've got a lot I'm working on. I'm in the middle of a new project, kind of a new old project. New project from a different light. Old project from a new light. I don't know. But I'll talk about that in the potential money making segment. But basically yesterday, excuse me. Yesterday I spent most of the day working on it. Till about 6:30 p.m. So I got pretty tired. But slept kind of on time-ish. And then woke up like around 11 p.m. till like probably after 1 a.m. because I remember looking and being like, what time is it? Because I've been up for a while. And it was 1 a.m. And I know I stayed up a little past then, so let's call it 1:30 a.m. I don't know why I was having some kind of cramps or something like cramps. I can't really tell what it was from because I did have some grilled cheese for dinner, like half of a grilled cheese sandwich, but it did have a lot of cheese in it, and sometimes that can be an issue. And I had these noodles for dinner. It's just like a noodle soup. And before that, during after lunch, sometime before dinner, I was kind of having a little bit of indigestion. Um, for lunch, I had a few taquitos and some of a cauliflower crust pizza that has a little veggies on it and stuff. So, not the healthiest, but I'm like, it's kind of vegetable based, but then it's got cheese on it. And then, taquitos is just like pretty much the ones I had were just like meat and, the corn tortilla. So, and in the morning things were good though. I hit the ground running, had that C4, was pretty gung ho about the day, but pretty much after I ate breakfast, my energy kind of slumped. For breakfast yesterday, I had like kind of like a TJ style hot dog. If you're from like a major city, or maybe not even, but you probably see like street vendors around that make these like TJ hot dogs. Out here, it's oftentimes Latinos who are, you know, manning those stands. It's like a business that they have that probably does really well. I see them kind of posted up outside of concerts, outside of events, outside of clubs at night. It's usually like what, like a $5 hot dog. Um it's usually a bacon wrapped hot dog with onions. Like they saute the onions, they saute you know like the the hot dog wrapped in bacon is already on the grill. Um, they have bell peppers that they saute as well, and they put all this on top of a hot dog. And the bun is kind of like, a little bit like, I don't know if it's oil or butter that they put on it and just heat it up, so it's kind of like oily and warm, and then they just like stuff the bun with like the hot dog and all the veggies and stuff, and then they kind of just throw a bunch of like, I think sometimes they put jalapenos in it, and then they put a bunch of like mayo and ketchup, mustard. Like honestly, like when I've gone clubbing and I've been at like Riches in San Diego or something, and like you come out and it's late and you're like, dang, I don't want to go down the street and stand in line at that Mexican place, at the taco shop, and like even though it's good food, it's like it's gonna take forever and it costs more. And then they got these hot dog stands like right outside. There's hardly ever a line. There's usually quite a few of them grilling up, and there's hardly ever a line. So even if you're just waiting for your Uber, you can just order one real quick. $5 fills you up for the night, kind of does away with your hangover. But like I mentioned before, I don't do good with cheap meats, and my mom had purchased these hot dogs from like I think they're from like Smart and Final. My stomach this year has not been liking cheap hot dogs. Um, I I'm really not like that snobby with stuff, but it's just my stomach just doesn't do like cheap meat that good. Like Oscar Mayer and those off brands of meat, like sometimes I've noticed like the quality, like we got some hot dogs once that were Oscar Mayer from like I think it was either Smart and Final or Vaughn's, and they were like this white color almost, like really light colored. They didn't look right, and we still were eating them, and I didn't feel good. Like it's just a little bit of indigestion. They don't go down right, and so when we got these chicken hot dogs, I was like, okay, like I ate one the other day, and I felt a little uh like like that didn't hit my stomach right. Like it tastes good, but it kind of didn't. It makes my stomach a little gurgly. And then yesterday, I ended up eating one for breakfast too, because that's what I wanted. There was like one hot dog left, and I was like, I'll just eat this with a couple eggs or whatever. And so I made like this TJ hot dog, like kind of little breakfast plate with like eggs and tomato, like a chopped up garden tomato, and I think that was all. But I mean, I was like, it's got some veggies, it's got some bread, it's got some meat, it's got some eggs. Like it could be worse. So just yeah, I think that hot dog got to me last night, and then the cheese, all the cheese I ate yesterday was not a good idea either. Like I know better, but sometimes I just do what I'm gonna do. I had my tea this morning. I don't know what I feel about it. It hasn't fully kicked in. I drank some of it last night. Like I've mentioned, I've been able to have caffeine at night. Not at night, but like around like sometime after 2 p.m., maybe around 5:30 p.m. A little bit of caffeine. So that kind of gave me a little bit of anxiety because I had a little like caffeine energy pump at a certain time, and that just didn't feel good. So yeah, maybe around like an hour from like maybe 6 to 7 or so, I was feeling kind of a little like maybe that little bit of tea last evening was not a good idea. But overall, yesterday was pretty productive. Like I pretty much spent all morning online. Uh After I got my little warm up in, I pretty much spent the rest of the day online, kind of focused on what I was trying to do. And that's basically all I really did for Mental Health Monday. It wasn't too involved. Um, I just tried to pay attention to my energy and my choices, and uh, yeah, the food decisions weren't that good. My focus wasn't that great. I do find it a little hard to focus because I've got a lot of things to do, a lot of options of things to do every day. Some of those options involve, having to make money, but not every day. I don't, I kind of have made it so that in my life I don't have to make money every day. Um, and so, I'm still kind of riding that, but even when I'm not making money, I'm doing stuff. Like I rarely have days where I'm just like not doing anything. Um, like I do take breaks though. I'm not like oh yeah, every day I'm like busy all day. Like I definitely take breaks. I've definitely realized that I like my schedule the way that it is with, start early before breakfast, and then, keep going after the breakfast time period. And after I keep going, just, you know, power through till about lunchtime and try to get everything or the majority of things, the difficult things done early in the day. I don't really have anything that I'm like watching right now that I'm really enjoying. I finished watching 6 Feet Under some time ago, and I was watching Vikings Valhalla, and then I kind of stopped. I was like, this is getting a little intense, and I kind of just, I don't know, the episodes are long. I kind of always get like this, like I'll watch something and I like it and I like the story, but then it's like, you know, once they kill off my favorite characters or whatever, or once it's like, I kind of get bored of the story sometimes. I think the thing that I like about it, um, it's kind of like the storyline involving the spread of Christianity and kind of like, I mean, not I'm not saying that I like the history of the spread of Christianity. I'm not into that kind of like holy war kind of like thing of like, you know, war for the sake of politics, but let's call it religion. Because that's kind of what a lot of that stuff was like. It was really like political movement. Um, and during the holiday times, especially once fall hits, and then Halloween comes and Thanksgiving comes and all that kind of stuff, Christmas and all that. It's really like a weird time of year. Pretty much the months October, November, December, for me have always been a weird time of year because you know, I've always been kind of raised in like a mixed idea of like all these like religious themes, and I kind of like how Vikings Valhalla has like this society of people that are kind of part of like this ancient pagan religion, in Europe, in like these Scandinavian people from like these Scandinavian type areas. And um I mean, I don't know, that kind of culture just fascinates me. I mean, I'm not trying to sound like I don't know, like I don't know how I'm trying to sound. I'll just say it. But basically, a lot of people say that, when they ask, Caucasian people like about your culture, like what's your culture, or what's white culture and things like that. And like people don't a lot of times know what to say. That's not uncommon. Or people say they don't have culture, or they kind of don't. I'm not saying everybody's like this, but yeah, there are people like I've dated people who were kind of like, oh, like I don't have any culture because I'm white, and I'm kind of like, that's a weird thing to say. Um, because they were asking me about my cultural background, and they were just, and it's kind of like exchange and conversation, and I'm trying to get to know them, and they're like, I'm like, yeah, what about your culture? And they're just like, oh, I don't have a culture, and like, I'm just kind of like, what? Like, I didn't know that people thought like that. Like, it was just kind of weird to me. But when I do see, kind of like pagan culture, it does kind of remind me of like white culture. Like, not that I'm white or that I know what white culture is, but that's kind of like, if I were a white person of European descent, I would probably think, I mean, I don't know, it's easy for me to say as a minority looking into like what would I do if I was this other like ethnicity? Like I don't really know, but I think with my mindset as it is, I would trace my heritage back, to Europe and kind of what my ancient, ancestors kind of followed before the spread of Christianity because it kind of wiped through Europe. Um, like what were the ancient religions, the ancient cultures? But I don't know. Like it seems to me that there aren't there's not a majority of people that gravitate towards that part of their culture maybe, and I think it's a cool interesting part of history. Like to me, I always like to see, Europe when it was still like indigenous, you know what I mean? Like when there were still like indigenous groups of people living off the land before all the spread of all this other nonsense that wiped through the world and just started like all these genocides and all these other things. Um I kind of like I kind of like looking at like the German people and the people from England and the people from Greenland and Iceland and Sweden and all these other places. It's like what were they doing, like what were they doing in these times? And that's kind of what I like about that show. And because of the themes of like paganism, they come out very strong during the fall. um for people who kind of like that part of history, that kind of like I kind of associate a lot of the pagan high religious kind of like um ritualistic kind of like celebrations and things with with Christmas, with Halloween, with Thanksgiving. Like there's pagan roots in all of that. There's pagan roots in like everything. Um but Christianity kind of like did this weird thing. Like it's a really deep story, I guess. But that's something that I realize I do like about it. I like that part about fall. It kind of, you know, reminds me of a lot of things about history that maybe I would not have otherwise thought much into, honestly. Like but yeah, I really like it. I really like learning about, you know, all these European, you know, all this European type of history. Like I don't know how realistic it is. I'm just saying like I like to look at it, think about it. Like I know it's Hollywood type stuff or Netflix or whatever it is. Like but I kind of like I like there was a long time that I was looking for a lot of like pagan like I think last year in 2022 and then in 2021 I was kind of during the fall learning a lot about paganism and pagan culture, and I was kind of doing these like series about it on another podcast, kind of relating like Christian holidays and kind of like how they kind of evolved into like what they are now. And I was following these people on YouTube that have like pagan like culture. They're like modern day pagans. Like I don't think they have, or they never said that they have like actual like blood roots to actual paganism. Like they converted to paganism, I guess, because of how they gravitate towards the culture of it because of their ethnicity. And so like they know where they're from. And they were practicing like Norse paganism, and I think their family was from like Denmark or something. Um, like in history, their family was from Denmark, but they were like, just you know, like kind of like white Americans. And I like metal music. If you know me well, you know that. Um, I don't only like metal, but I like a lot. I have a variety of taste in music, but I like metal. And as one of the types of music I listen to. And, whenever I go to metal shows and things, or even like watch videos, music videos, you sometimes kind of, I don't know, I kind of took it this way. You sometimes kind of see that pagan culture kind of represented in some of the music, like with the outfits. You see people wearing like a lot of kind of leather things, like those kind of like leather kind of wrist guards, and like some of the outfits, they're not like pagan garb, but like it reminds me of kind of like what you see in history in those time periods sometimes, with all the like, studded types of stuff, and like kind of like it's kind of like got this Viking and kind of Scandinavian kind of cultural overlap with like kind of like just this dark kind of idea. And I was always wondering if like the screaming and metal kind of evolved from throat singing from some cultures, because there are a lot of cultures that have this kind of like throat singing. And I know in oh, I don't know, I think that some music that's traditional for pagans does, some of it does have like that like throat singing sometimes. And you know that kind of deep voice, like if you've ever listened to the band like Rammstein or like some groups like that, they still kind of have that like that deep like singing voice that's like, in the US you don't really hear a lot of music where people are like not trying to sing like falsetto, or not trying to sing like, you know, um, in a higher pitch voice. Like usually you don't have people going lower, unless you sing bass or something like that. But usually, like I saw something that I thought was interesting. Speaking of singing bass, I knew this person that I grew up with at church that she sang bass, and it was kind of interesting. I was like I used to kind of just play around after church. Like I would be there for so long, like because that's just culturally what I did. Like Saturday evenings and afternoons, I was like, if there was something going on at church, I'd probably still stay because I'm like, what am I gonna do at home, So might as well stick around for whatever's happening, if it's meetings or like practice for like choir and stuff. So I used to kind of sit in on the choir practices because they weren't like seriously practicing for anything in particular, but it was like, oh, anyone who wants to practice learning some songs or whatever. I really liked it because I was like, wow, I never learned like gospel music really. Like I kind of grew up learning more like contemporary, like that contemporary acoustic rock kind of church music. And so like I was always around gospel music, but I never really knew how people kind of like did those harmonies and stuff. And there's this guy who was really good at teaching all the parts. Like he could hear all the parts and he could teach. Like so there would be maybe like 20 of us or something, and he'd be like, who sings this, who sings that, what part, like alto, soprano, whatever. And she was the bass section, I think maybe with another guy, but it was just interesting. I'd never really seen that before. But I know even in like some Alaskan cultures and stuff, there's people who um have that kind of um I don't know what the that singing is called, but there's like Mongolians who do that. I think Tulvan. I don't remember what if that's how you pronounce it. And then there's some other people that there's a lot of cultures that have like throat singing, but I kind of wonder on the European side if that kind of turned into like the screaming metal that we have today. Not all metal has screaming, but some of it does. Um, but I just wonder if that's where it evolved from, because like you don't really see other music that's like screaming like that necessarily, not that I know about. um but it I don't know, I just don't know. I'd like to look into that. But yeah, like I kind of just wonder when I see like overlaps in like clothing styles and just this season. It doesn't feel like the right season. Like this morning, I got up, turned on the heater because it was 65 degrees in the house, but it's gonna get up to 81 degrees today. So it's things like that. I'm just like, what the heck is going on? Um, but yeah, I'm just trying to kind of figure out more about kind of like what I want to do with this. Um, but yeah, like when it comes to, you know, um, when it comes to being like, uh, you know, interested in, certain cultures, um, religions, rituals. I think mostly what I get interested in is like rituals. I like rituals. Um, all the religion stuff, it kind of ruins things for me sometimes because it's like I start to look at the aspect of like control, and I'm like, really? Like I think people were pulling your leg on that, like I can kind of see that like there's this manipulation aspect when it's like, oh, we have this whole organized thing where like you got to do this or else you're gonna be in punishment or whatever. It's like, come on. Whenever I start hearing that kind of stuff, it almost reminds me of like how parents lie to their kids, and they're like, if you don't behave when we go to the store, Santa Claus isn't gonna bring you anything. That's kind of it's kind of like that. It's like, well, if you believe the superstitions, if you don't behave, if you don't fall in line, then there's going to be a consequence of this like fairy tale kind of situation. I feel like that's kind of how it goes, like, oh, like, it kind of gives people some kind of leverage to have control over others, and what they do or don't do. Um, some of it's based on prejudice. Those choices can be made on prejudice. Some of those choices are made on, you know, yeah, control, prejudice, manipulation. There's a lot of lies that get like intermingled into like any religion. I'm not saying just Christianity. Any religion has an aspect of some kind of evil leadership. Um, Usually, I don't know if that's true with every single religion, maybe, but I've definitely noticed that there is that kind of like, brainwashing of fear, to keep people in line. Or else why else would people need to go to these religious services and rely on the teachers and stuff? Like most people know what to do. Like I feel like if you've been going to your religious, events since childhood, I think by a certain time you kind of don't learn anything too new as far as like what you need to do. Like maybe you need reassurance, maybe you need, the accountability, but I think with the general stuff you usually know what to do. Most people usually know how to be good to other people. Even if they don't do it, they know what they're supposed to do or not supposed to do. You're not supposed to like steal money out of like your elderly family's purse. You're not supposed to go behind people's backs lying on them and like tarnishing their reputation. You're not supposed to, you know, take people's things. Like there's stuff like that that's like you don't need to be told like more than once. Like once you're kind of told that, you're not supposed to just like cuss people out just because you're having a bad day. It's like there's certain stuff that you're like, it's just common sense, so people shouldn't have to remind you not to do it. um I just think that if there's no like fear involved in not doing it, a lot of people won't be able to justify not doing it, and so that kind of keeps them from not doing it because they're like, there's this fear aspect. And if that's what works for people to try to act good towards others and towards themselves, then okay. But I mean, like, I don't know. Like, I feel like it kind of people take it to a whole level where it's like pretty nuts sometimes. Um, but yeah, this season, like I rewatched um I think that movie called The King, about King Henry when he's like young and becomes the king in his youth. Um, and you know, didn't really want to, and you know, um, but there was a scene in there where it's like in the, I guess he was sitting in the seat um of judgment or something, like he was like in the king's like throne or whatever you call it, like a stone throne or whatever it is, and he's sitting there and his whole court is kind of like, there's a lot of people standing along the sides, and you see people in these outfits that look like they remind me of Santa Claus. Like they have like red, it's like almost like a red velvety looking, over the shoulder kind of like, I don't even know what you call these things. It's not a shawl. It's like a shoulder vest. Kind of like it just clamps around your neck kind of, but it drapes over your shoulders and like the top of your chest, but it's not long like a cape or anything. Um and it has like it's like a red velvet color, and it has like this white fur around it. And when I saw that, I was like, this is kind of like maybe like a uniform or some kind of garb signifying like their place in the kingdom of like, okay, you're like dignitaries or something. And all the people were wearing that, and it was very, not all the people, but like the people who were standing at one side of the court were wearing that, and it just looked like little Santa Claus little outfits. And I was wondering, I was like, is this like a seasonal thing, like is it, but it's like they're in England, and it's kind of like this is back in those days, way back in those days. Um, and you kind of see the outfits that they're wearing, and it's kind of like very, um, it just reminded me of Christmas. Like it reminded me of like Santa Claus, like a little Santa Claus elf outfit kind of thing. Um, just with the colors and the fur and all these different types of things that you see. Just that kind of, it just fascinates me, like the kind of like European like ancient garb, and then kind of like the combination of like the pagan religion and then Catholicism, Christianity. It like you see that in that movie too. You kind of see this like, you know aspect of like the church being involved in that government system, and it's just real weird. Like it's you know like history is fascinating. I know that watching through Netflix isn't like the best way to get like all the history, but it's like this time of year I usually do like to study a lot and learn a lot about like European culture, paganism, that kind of stuff. Because I mean, all I think most cultures have some kind of significance with like this time of year, with like harvest and all this type of stuff. But I mean, well, depending where on Earth you are, but um it's just interesting that we don't really hear about it. We just, like the American way, we just kind of celebrate our version of the modern holidays. But I kind of like looking back, and so since today is officially Halloween, um that usually marks for me like some kind of interesting study period that I usually enjoy. I mean, have we had a full moon? I feel like we've had a full moon. um Maybe I should look that up before I say that we have, but I feel like we've had a full moon. Um, Let me see. I mean, I've seen the moon; it looked full to me, but I never really like looked it up. Trying to type with one finger. I can't believe today is the last day of October. Um, it's really I don't know. I don't even know how. Like, I'm not even thinking about snowboarding. Like, I want to go. I really want to go, but I'm like, first of all, it's going to cost a fortune, and second of all, we've still got weather near the 80-degree, range right now. So I don't know. Um. mm, so yeah, Eastern time on Saturday, October 28th. Uh, that was the Hunter's Moon. Will reach peak illumination at 4:24 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday, October 28th. So that was a couple days back. That's Eastern time, so 7:24 or so Pacific. And wait, what? Oh, this is UTC. Um, and yeah, so that was the Hunter's Moon. So I think we're still riding that full moon period. Um, I kind of noticed that on the other day, I don't know what day it was, but I kind of noticed that we're getting that moon, uh the moon's kind of back onto the cycle where it like shines through my window again at night, like around, like usually my lights out time's around 9 p.m. lately, and so it's been shining through my window around those times. Um Around that time. And I've kind of missed it because it kind of went off on this other cycle for a while. And I was like, dang, I kind of miss like sleeping with my window shades open just to like, I like to let the moonlight in. Like, I'm weird, I know. Like, I like that kind of stuff though. I'm like, living in the city, like anything that kind of connects me to nature is like, thank God, like there's something that I can think about nature, and like be kind of like connected to it. So if it's just leaving my blinds open so the sun and the moonlight can come in, sometimes that's about all I'm gonna get. Unless I go over to the beach or something. But I really do like paying attention to like the shadows of the sun and like when the sun comes up and when the sun's setting, and like it kind of just helps me track my day. I'm like, oh, I woke up and it was dark and it was cold, and now it's sunny and it's clear and bright. And I almost start hoping, like, how if you watch Game of Thrones, there's that phrase that they're always saying, like, winter is coming, and I find myself almost thinking, like, not about like night walkers or white walkers or whatever they're called, like, not about that, but I mean, I find myself thinking about um last winter, and I'm like, dude, that winter was pretty harsh and super long. And I find myself thinking like, oh gosh, like I hope this winter is not like that one. And so in my head I'm like, oh no, winter is coming, it's like, here we go again. But actually, it's cold in the morning, but we've got a little heat wave right now, so it's gonna get up to the 80s today. um so yeah, but that's kind of, I don't know what people think about Halloween. Like, I was raised with kind of like mixed messages about all the kind of fall and winter holidays. I was raised, you know, I'm not saying that the way I was raised was the best thing, so everyone needs to follow how I was raised. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's just a matter of fact, like that's how I was raised, around a religious environment that acknowledged that, we actually learned the history of, why the church celebrates certain holidays and how paganism became, you know, had a role in Christianity. And it's kind of interesting because, the earliest Christians were. Jewish. Uh, and then from there, there were definitely people who converted in from other types of, religions in the Middle East, and you know, Greek people, Roman people, um, people like Mediterranean areas, and then into like Europe and Asia and all these types of places. And you see in history, people becoming Christians, um like you kind of start to see that in history. And um you know I guess what I was kind of taught for the most part was, everyone at one point was kind of following the Jewish religion. And then there was like this split off, or there was the excommunication of the Christians from the Jewish synagogues. And then, this, I don't know like the timeline exactly, but there was this kind of like debate between, the people who come in as non-Jews, like do they have the same covenant expectations as the people who were born Jewish, like circumcision and all, and doing these other types of rituals, like. And then, there was some determination between like the Jewish born Christians and the Christians who converted from other places. Um and so, you see kind of like in history, like if you know the history of like Hanukkah, and you know also the history of how Antiochus Epiphanes kind of had a role in leading um leading the uh the pagans, uh or basically making kind of like a pagan hybrid religion out of Christianity. That's how come we, in the Christian religion, you don't follow the moon um cycle. It's the sun, which is, you follow the sun cycle. And so that's why there's the Gregorian calendar. And then you have days of the week, like days like I don't know if this is true, but they have days of the week that are like, like Sunday, for the sun, and then Monday for the moon. And I know Wednesday, somebody said, is for like Odin. That's a god, a pagan god, like Odin, like Odin's day, like Wednesday. Comes from that, I believe. Um, and there's all these different days of the week, um, that are based on like pagan related, days. And then the holidays as well are, no longer in Christianity is there really like a Jewish holiday. It's more like the pagan day is celebrated because it goes by the solar calendar. So the pagan day is celebrated, but it's kind of focused on some Christian event. So like that's how it is with Easter, with Passover, and with Thanksgiving. With There's something else that happens, like some harvest, festivals and things that happen in a lot of cultures around November. Christmas originally had nothing to do with Christ. It's some other day, which is like why there's all these things about like Christmas trees and Christmas wreaths and all these different types of things. I'm not saying like people shouldn't like it or whatever. I love that kind of stuff. Not the modern Christianity and stuff, but I mean, I don't like the modern holidays, but like the modern American typical way of celebrating holidays, I don't really like that, but I like the history behind them, um, for the most part. the pagan history behind them, like the that hybrid Christian pagan uh, history. That's kind of what I like. I find it interesting. And yeah, when it comes to Halloween, that's also a a holiday that is it's got pagan roots to it. Um, Most Christian churches don't have like an actual Halloween, and I don't know how long they've been doing these types of harvest festival type things that are like non ghoul, non demon, non ghost, non devil kind of costumes. You can be like an animal or like some kind of Bible character or something, and you go to like get hay rides and carve pumpkins and bob for apples, and like you do the little like party games and like a maze and like all these kind of things. You do all that kind of stuff as like a celebration that usually takes place on Halloween, but it's not considered a Halloween celebration. But a lot of places have Halloween celebrations. Um, so I don't really know. I think um, I'm debating. I might go to like a local little harvest thing tonight if I can find something around that's right in my neighborhood where I can just go and like get something to eat or like, you know, whatever. I might do that just to say I did something. Um, but one of my friends said something that always will stick with me, that, Halloween is like the one holiday that's like very, your local community, like most holidays you kind of stay home with your family, with your friends, but Halloween is like it's almost like St. Patrick's Day. It's like you go out and you kind of like mingle with people, and you're kind of more, it's more of a sociable kind of thing. And there's also like Dia de los Muertos. I don't know what day that is exactly, but that, like with the Latino culture, that's pretty big in LA and in San Diego. So I've definitely attended multiple celebrations along those lines, and I've been online seeing that my friends have been to certain things, and they've dressed up with the hats and the skeleton makeup faces, and they have those like ofrendas. We used to have those at work. They would put up like an ofrenda with like the candy skulls, and like it's like a memorable, for anyone that they wanted to put on that like altar there of like someone who might have passed away or something. And it's just a fascinating season. It's fascinating to me. Like I don't know the history of all the stuff pretty much without going into a whole lot of detail. The extent of what I've said in this episode is pretty much what I know. Um and so yeah, like but I don't, when I say pagan, I'm not trying to mention the term pagan as if it like refers to someone who's like breaking like ethical laws and immoral and all that kind of stuff. Like I mean pagan, like people who actually practice the pagan religion, you know. And I know that that term has a lot of weight to it. Like even like when people say heathen, like heathen is a type of like culture of people who practice a certain way. Like but people use the word heathen as like, oh, you're a heathen, like you are, doing these evil things. And it's kind of like that's not really what heathen means, but it's like the word pagan kind of almost has that connotation that like, I mean, it doesn't mean that, but it's like, I mean, Christian has a connotation too, when you think Christian, you're not thinking of like, not everybody's always thinking of like peace and love and like, like togetherness. You're thinking of like separation and like war and, you know, um, manipulation and killing and things like that. Like, so, whatever. Religion has a political side to it a lot of times too. It just gets messy. Um, but I'll probably do some studying today around these topics because I like these topics. they fascinate me, they interest me. It's to me it's productive to learn. Like every year I learn a little bit more, and this year I kind of didn't learn a lot about paganism like I was the past 2 years. I was kind of learning some other stuff. But I do like it. I do like paganism. Um, as a religion, as a culture, I respect it. I do think that, it's hard to learn about. Um, I mean, as a person of color, it's not something that think I'd feel very welcome to just like go to like an event, because I have kind of heard some mixed information about like, is it really that safe for minorities, because there might be this like underlying white supremacy to it sometimes. I mean, there's kind of like these infiltrations. I don't think that the pagan religion is like all about that, but it's like it is like Norse paganism and some other types of paganism are kind of based in like this European kind of identity, where it's like you're not born from there. Like I'm not born from Europe. And so, you know, you kind of get these different things like that where they're like, "Oh, you're not born from there or whatever." Um but I kind of like that. I kind of like it. And so I'll spend some time today learning a little bit about things. Um and then as we go into the month of November, we shall see how things go. We'll see if it even snows, like usually near Thanksgiving is when a lot of, resorts for skiing, snowboarding, they're starting to talk about opening. I mean, I think in some states it's probably getting cold and rainy and stuff. But over here, we're still almost in summer most of the day. Just late evenings and early afternoons, it's warm. Uh, I mean, late evening and early mornings, it's cold. I mean, and then it gets warm. But all right, guys, I think I'm actually gonna have like chicken pot pie soup for breakfast. I know that sounds weird, but I don't care. I don't really want to cook anything, and so that's what I'll decide that I will eat. I'll just heat that up in a pan and then get on with my morning. But hopefully you guys like this Halloween episode. That's about all I have to say. Um I don't have any scary stories or anything. If I come across anything that's like a scary story, maybe I'll talk about it. I don't really do anything scary. Like I play Magic the Gathering. That's about the most dark kind of hobby that I have, is like playing Magic the Gathering and like dabbling in like these religious teachings. Like I like to learn about different religions and rituals, and some of the rituals are kind of like I don't practice them, but some are kind of like based in like forms of witchcraft. I'm kind of fascinated by witchcraft and like voodoo and things like that. Just as like I just like that, a lot of times there's these ancient religions that are attached to these like ethnicities and like cultural groups, and I wish that I was taught more about that from an open-minded perspective. I was always taught like don't even think about it or look at it because it's evil. Like I was always just taught that it's evil, don't even, you know. So I was kind of brainwashed into thinking that way. So it's hard for me to like dive into stuff because I'm always kind of cautious, like, oh no, like maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. Like maybe if I go too far into it, I won't be able to come back, like, so I do kind of have that kind of in my upbringing that kind of makes me kind of stay away from it. But I mean, religions have to teach you that sometimes. If they're trying to control you, they have to kind of teach you not to do certain stuff. But I'm probably gonna like dive into some content about cults and stuff like that. And like I like that. I mean, when I say I like something, I'm not saying that like I agree with like people being horrible to each other. I never agree with that, but I like to hear people talk about their life and their stories. But yeah, I'm uh I'm gonna get on with it. And all right, guys, have a good Halloween.